Hello? Okay, perfect. All right, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Massoud. I'm a government relations manager for Southern California Edison. I just want to thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. We hope that this conversation and presentation is of betterment to you. We're going to be talking about some of our customer service programs, outages, some of the work that SEE does within our service territory, as well as communication resources for you all. Tonight, before we kick off our presentation, I wanted just to go over our agenda for you so you have an idea of what we'll be discussing. Like I said, we'll be doing an overview outage presented by Luis. We'll hear an update from the Palm Springs district manager with regards to some of the reliability and growth work that we're doing here in the community. And then we'll also talk about preparedness and communication, and Jeff Mumford will be presenting that for us. So, but before we kick that off and I hand it over to Luis, one of the top priorities for Southern California Edison is safety. So I wanted to have a safety moment for us all. And with regards to this safety moment, we're going to be talking about metallic balloons as it relates to their danger with utility lines. So some of the best practices for those are metallic balloons should never be released outdoors. We'll play a video shortly here so you can see the severe impacts that it will have. Metallic balloons should always be tied down or properly weighted. Stores and vendors should always make sure that the balloons are properly weighted and stored inside, never outside. Another helpful tip is to never try to retrieve a balloon if it got tangled up in a wire. Please avoid that and call 911 instead. And finally, to properly dispose, make sure you release the knot or puncture the balloon before you throw it away in the trash, just to mitigate that balloon releasing and getting tangled up in the wires. So now I'd like to play a quick video for you just to kind of illustrate the dangers. And we'll do a little slow-mo portion for you. So something so small you would never think could cause so much damage. So just be mindful next time you are at a party and they have balloons out. Please watch that for us. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Luis, and he's going to begin our discussion about the outage overview process.
All right, thank you for that. Good evening. Thank you for coming back. I see a lot of familiar faces. For those of you online, what you're missing out is a crowd of about 15,000 people here. So maybe you can join us next time. All right, so let's go ahead and get going. So again, my name is Luis Slada. I'm with the Outage Communications and Management team. And part of my responsibility is to get out into the communities and share what outages or types of outages may impact our customers, what happens behind the scenes when these outages occur, or if we're doing a maintenance project, what happens behind the scenes as we embark in that process. So let's go ahead and jump in. So typically most customers will be impacted by any of these 4 or 5 outages. Number one, a maintenance outage. A maintenance outage is just that. We're performing some maintenance on some assets. We're replacing a pole, new transformer, new wires, whatever it is. And because we know it's maintenance, we know the scope of the project, we know which customers will be impacted, and because we have the luxury of time, we will push out notifications to our customers as early as possible. Which reminds me, if you haven't signed up for digital notifications, please sign up for digital notifications. That allows us the opportunity to push out those notifications to you at about 10 days in advance of that outage so you can prepare for those types of outage events. The next type of outage is a repair outage, also known as an unplanned outage event. A good example of that is a car hitting a pole. Okay, now that happens quite a bit, right? Cars driving and it just hits a pole or transformer or some asset and the outage occurs. In those instances, we don't have the luxury of time, so we will not push out any advanced notifications. But if you're signed up for digital notifications, as the evolution of that outage continues to move forward, we'll provide some updates to you about that outage. For example, an estimated restoration time, okay, location, example, or what's happening out in the field, okay? The next one is an emergency outage. An emergency outage can be maybe considered a hybrid of a maintenance and kind of repair or unplanned outage event. A good example of that is perhaps crews are performing some some inspections of some equipment and they find a leaking transformer, for example. In that instance, that presents a hazard to the community, so we need to get out there and replace that transformer and remove that hazardous condition as soon as possible. In those instances, we may not have the luxury of a couple of days to push out notifications because it's something that we need to address right away. Okay, that's more of an emergency basis. The next one is a public agency type of request. Now, this typically happens when there's an active wildfire in the community or like in some wildland area, and CAL FIRE or fire agency will request of SCE to shut off power to preserve the safety of the crews in the field. Okay. Now, what happens behind the scenes? So if we know the types that we need to perform a pole replacement in your neighborhood, right? We know in advance which poles have to be replaced, which assets have to be replaced. We'll start to work in advance to see how many of those assets can we perform or replacements perform in one outage event. In other words, can we bundle some of that work? Do the logistics and the capabilities of those assets allow us the opportunity to bundle more work? And one thing that we've heard from our communities is, hey, you're out here too much, right? So if we can perform a lot of work or maybe replace 2 or 3 assets in one outage event, that reduces and limits the outage fatigue for our customers. So that's one thing that we're looking at doing and growing that even moving forward. So it's very important that we're able to engage with our customers on any proactive events in your community. Again, you're gonna hear me say this a million times. Please make sure that we have your updated contact information so that we can push out those maintenance outage notices to you well in advance, okay? Now, in the outage space, so what happens behind the scenes when that car hits a pole and the power goes out? So within the first 30 minutes, we're not gonna have exactly the details that you need if, let's say, if your business is impacted, on what's happening out in the field. Because in the first 30 minutes, we're collecting data from the field, we're collecting data from different assets to let us know what's happening, where the fault is located, and we're actually deploying resources to that location. So if you call me within 5 minutes, I'm gonna let you know, hey, listen, give me about 20 minutes so I can get more details for you. So that's what happens within the first 30 minutes. At about the 30, maybe to 60-minute mark, we'll start pushing out notifications to customers to let you know, customer, you have lost power. We know what's happening. We're aware. We're working on it, okay? And if by that time we've already identified the cause, for example, a car hitting a pole, then we'll go ahead and let you know there's a car hitting a pole, this is what's happening, and this is the estimated restoration time. All righty? So let me go ahead and move on. Now, these are some of the common causes for a repair outage or an unplanned outage event. And I'm not going to hit all of them, but I'm going to touch maybe just a couple of them. One of them that happens quite a bit is contamination on lines. Now, the only reason that this popped up for me is because I just had a customer meeting with a hospital where they lost power last week for about 30 minutes. And when they were asking, well, what happened? I said, well, what happened is that, over time, there's a lot of dust and grime that builds up on the lines. We had a little bit of a shower come through that helped kind of conduct electricity, and they had a brief power outage for that customer. So that does tend to happen. So just because it's fresh in my mind, be aware that things like that can impact our electricity. I always mention this quite a bit, is birds and animals get into our equipment all of the time. We have about 216,000 miles of transmission distribution line. Our service territory is very large, and at any point, we can have an animal making contact with overhead assets. Whenever we see this happening quite a bit, we do our best to install bird guards or squirrel guards or whatever we can to dissuade animals from getting into contact or looking for those nooks and crannies within our electrical system. However, we can't cover everything. So animals will indeed make contact with sometimes with substation equipment, and in those instances, we'll see a quick reach of power for our customers. And you've heard me mention this already, a car hitting a pole. This happens quite a bit. It's a very common cause for an unplanned outage event. And in fact, we know that there's a trend there. And I think you've heard me say this last time. This typically occurs on a Friday night, on a Saturday night, or Super Bowl Sunday. That's when cars get tipsy and they jump out in front of a car. When poles get tipsy and jump out in front of cars. Okay, so that happens quite a bit. Now, one thing that we've looked to do is really to amp up our self-service options for our customers. And one way of doing that is so that when you go onto se.com and you want to know what's going on, hey, I just lost power, what's happening? So you can go onto se.com under the outage space, and now we have a larger repository, a mapping repository system available for you. Now, this is a very dynamic, very interactive mapping system where you can enter the address for your home, your business, or your neighbor and find out what's happening down the street, right? If we know there's a power outage and you need to know what's going on because it's impacting a family member, right? And we need to keep track of what's happening to make sure that mom's okay or that aunt is okay, you can do that here. Type in that address, it'll let you know what's happening nearby. It'll provide the estimated restoration times. Now, one thing I do want to note for you is that our crews now have this, what's called a C3 app out in the field. And so what happens is, let's say there's a car hitting a pole, and our crew is deployed, and they're working on the restoration efforts, and et cetera, but they run into some issue that was unexpected, right? They need to dig a little deeper, they need to do something that's a little more strenuous. What that field crew will do is they'll get that C3 app, they'll update it from their remote location, and that update gets fed into our outage management system, and it'll push out notifications to customers. So if our field crew understands, hey, this is going to take an additional 2 hours, let me update that now, and it'll send out that notification to our outage management system, and in turn, that'll push it out directly to you. So that's a huge enhancement, and we want to make sure that's why I keep pushing it. Let's make sure that we have your updated contact information so we keep updating you with all of those details and nuances that keep coming up. Okay, so let me now pass it over to Matt.
All right, good evening, everyone. Once again, name is Matthew Barbie. Most people call me Matt, so that works for me. I want to talk about the maintenance and construction of the electrical system in the Coachella Valley. Edison assets are maintained by the crews out of the Cathedral City Yard, which we call the Palm Springs Yard. Things we're doing in effort to provide an enhanced experience is grid hardening. Grid hardening essentially is replacement of aging infrastructure and operational functionality of the system itself. So it's dark in the back of the room and I really want to turn the light on. We're adding more operational switches so I can hit my elbow and the light turns on in the back of the room. It's reliability and operational capability. So before it was a very rudimentary system. Now it's becoming more advanced and technological so we can control things, isolate it, shrink outages, return power in a more timely manner. Which is a better end user experience. Proactive sustainability, constant growth in this valley. Obviously, we see growth all the time. New commercial, residential developments are popping up. So we're adding circuitry and substations throughout time. Part of it is meeting the intent of the need and the growth. So it's trying to feed everything effectively. Edison is proactive in that approach. It does take some time, but we constantly look at the power flows and where we need to shift our power and the power demand itself. Obviously, you guys have all seen the developments out here. I'm relatively new to the area. I'm completely amazed by the amount of growth that's going on here. It will continue to go. It's trending in that direction for this valley, for us, as far as the Palm Springs district. For the next 5 to 10 years. Some areas in the Edison system are kind of flatline and it's a maintenance type of a district. Palm Springs is a growth district, so we will continue to add circuits and substations to meet the demand of the customer's needs. Obviously, everything as we move forward in California is electrification. More cars, telephones, computers, everything's just, the demand is going up, so Edison's trying to meet the demand at a timely pace. Part of what we're doing as well, I spoke to it a little bit, which is the grid hardening. Previously, we focused a lot on wildfire mitigation, which was covered conductor projects. You probably heard a lot about that and the PSPS effects. We're doing more targeted underground. So we have aging infrastructure. A lot of it is proactive replacement and the automation. So trying to make sure that we stay out in front of it as expected. Obviously, at times things fail. Cars, as we talked about, car hit pole could cause an underground failure. So lots of things we discover as time goes on, but we want to make sure we're proactive in replacing it and creating isolation points for the system.
Thank you, Matt. I'm Jeff Monford, and I represent the company before the news media of the Coachella Valley and some other parts of Southern California. It's a pleasure to be here. And I apparently talk a lot, so they wanted me to discuss communications. So you heard Luis mention a few times, sign up for notifications. And all of this is actually on a different slide. So I've skipped ahead of myself in my mind. We're talking about the outage preparedness, outages and various types and all of that. So we want people just to have a general sense of what could happen and to be prepared and to have common sense preparation kit, key information that you have to have, chargers for devices, some food and water, essential documents, and that kind of thing. What do you need to be without power for a period of time? So this is information that we have on the website, and we wanted to share this with you here. One thing that we have on the slide, I'll point out, familiarize yourself with your home's utility boxes and how to turn them off. So they're not always in a place that might make sense. Mine is around the corner on the backside of my garage in the next door neighbor's courtyard. And the one in there that is really for the wall oven says stove. So, you know, none of that really made sense. But I recently had to intrude on the neighbors several times and go in there and deal with that. And I am aware enough of how the breaker boxes work, so I was comfortable operating those switches. But if you have any questions or you're not comfortable, you're at the least bit of doubt, don't go there, get help, ask someone who has more expertise in dealing with where the power might be. Sometimes when there's an outage, someone might connect a generator. And we ask, don't connect those to the home, connect them to individual appliances, such as the fridge, such as one of those little rolling air conditioners, maybe a fan, a computer charger, some lighting. Individual connections are okay with the generator, but don't hook it up to the house. That can cause backfeed, and someone who is coming to work at your house or in your neighborhood might encounter power where they expect none because the power is out. Also, when the power is restored, we could have way too much going on in a circuit at once. So we just ask people to be really generator smart. So those are a few points. Oh, I wanted to mention, I have older neighbors in my neighborhood in Rancho Mirage. And Sue is one of my favorites, and she lives very close to me, and called up one day and said, the garage door is broken. I don't know how I need to go. Can you come? So I went over and I pulled the thing, you know, that cord on the ceiling. Bang! It was very jarring. But of course, then I was able to raise the door for her to come and go. So with Sue, she's not spry enough to do all that on her own. So we have to assess our physical capabilities and be smart with the decisions we make and ask for help sometimes. So those are a few thoughts we wanted to share on outage preparation. So we have so much information on sce.com. You can see here all of this is sce.com and Outage Center, and there's going to be a lot on the menu there. Phone numbers you need, other information, links to helpful services, and so on, including, you see, the handles for SCE's social platforms. I'll get back to social platforms again in a minute. We put in this food safety tips just because not everyone is really aware of the importance of keeping certain kinds of food cold, and if they're not kept cold, they may not be safe to consume. So basics in food safety, keep that fridge closed if the power is off for any length of time. You know, if we've given you an advance notice, and my freezer is a bunch of those freezer packs that came with frozen things that were ordered over time from various places. And so now I've got a big supply of those freezer blocks. So they're handy for lunches, but they'd also be good in an outage to keep key things cool enough. So I'm pretty well prepared, and I didn't have to buy them, so that was great. Cans and dry goods. I'm not a big fan of the Trader Joe's vegetarian chili, but I do have 2 cans because I need to have food that is ready to eat now that doesn't require cooking, and so that's how I've coped with that. So that's just another helpful hint we have here. Also, you know, if the power goes out during the day, walk over and turn on a light switch. That way, if the power comes on at night, the light will come on and you'll know the power is back, and you might not otherwise. A little small common sense thing. So signing up for notifications, Luis pitched this at the beginning, and I knew I got to come and talk about it again. SCE.com has been improved and it's going to keep improving, and we're really moving towards self-service, making things obvious and easier than ever before to do certain transactions on the site, including signing up for notifications. So it's SCE.com, go to your account. Once you're in there, click on your profile settings. Oh, look, do I have a build? That's so exciting. Okay, so in your profile settings, you're going to get to see some of these buttons, and you'll motor on through just like you're ordering something on Amazon, and you'll end up completing your profile. And yes, I will follow you on this and that, and move your way through, finalize your preferences. It's all quite standard. I'm really fond of my colleagues in communications who handle the social media platforms of the company. There's so much thought put into them, what we do put, what we don't put. We always have safety, which is the company's #1 value, topmost in mind. And so that's one reason why we are really proud of the output on Instagram, Facebook, X, and we're not allowed to go on TikTok because there's some platform safety issues, but we're everywhere else. And also LinkedIn for stuff like that too. So the social platforms are a valuable set of tools. And I think that might be the last slide. So we are eager to answer any questions you might have. We can certainly talk to you a little bit about any personal account needs, and we have Luis brought forms you can fill in to keep your account information confidential. If you're having an issue at your home or business, we can take that information, look into things, and get back to you. So if there are any questions, please don't be shy. Yes? Well, we did add some customer service staff to handle call volume at the same time that was going on with the website improvements. So people are able to help themselves on their own more than ever. And if not, I'm not gonna be obfuscate on this. The call times are still longer than we would like for people who need to reach a live person. So that's there, and they're the usual prompts you would expect to try to get you triaged at least somewhat close to the people who can help. But nevertheless, I think users of the site will see some improvements, and people who are just not able to get their need met online can still reach someone. It's not ideal, but it's also constructed in a way that is meant to conserve customer resources. You know, everything the utility does, nearly everything, comes through in bills. And we're always looking for ways to try to manage what we're charging customers. And as every business knows, people are very expensive, and we're looking at how can we get more done without having necessarily to increase the cost of what the service we deliver with the staffing. So that's what motivates all of that. Yes?
When there's an outage that
All of the above. The system generally knows within moments of any kind of a system failure. The number of sensors has multiplied hugely, and we generally know, oh, there's an outage there, and there's a crew of brilliant people. It's the most astounding tour I've taken in my 4 years at the company was at the Grid Control Center. Big window wall as tall as this room, and behind which were all these people with way too many qualifications operating the grid, our portion of it, SCE's portion of it, and they're getting alerts in nearly real time, however fast that information can travel on the power lines, not necessarily through the phone lines, but on the power lines from computer to computer and alerting someone. And then the computer system will begin suggesting, here's a workaround. Turn off that switch, turn on, move the power from here to here, go around the block, so that way the next block has power while this block may not. That's increasingly automated and yet constantly supervised by people who look at it. Now, you asked, should I call the outage in? We would like it if you did. It's helpful information, and it helps pinpoint some things from time to time. So it's not necessarily essential. We will know about an outage, but it's still a good thing to do. Yes, yeah, it is. It works pretty well, too. Yes, ma'am. 2 questions. I hear you well. Okay, that's a great question. The question is, what work does SCE have planned for the next half year, say? So I'm going to ask Matt to handle that.
So there's always a certain amount of work in the pipeline based on outage availability and crew resource. We may or may not execute what's in our plan. What we've done this year is we've called it summer readiness. We spoke about maintenance outages. Previously, we have compliance due dates that are driven with, so we want to be 30 days ahead. So they could land in the summertime. What we've done this year is worked ahead of ourselves and have a bundle of work in hand, essentially, which will allow us to perform work January to May, and it'll pull in a lot of the things that we may look at in the summer, which may be risk-based. Risk is, oh, it's too hot, can't take an outage. But it's something we want to do on a maintenance perspective to prevent an outage or a failure in the future. So, we look at a few things. With that being said, we take advantage of when the weather is agreeable, the heat, and we'll perform work as planned. Often you may notice you have nighttime outages as well. It's an option that we exercise at times because it's the least impactful from a lot of times when you're asleep, when it's not hot, it's okay to be asleep with the lights out, as well as commercial and industrial customers. Their impact is less at night because they don't have to shut down. Infrastructure, additional circuits, DSP is what we call them. There's always things that are planned. Typically, I could probably get a better list. I couldn't do it off the cuff, but we always have circuit upgrades planned for ampacity increases, which it could be an existing circuit, which we may just upsize wire, which may provide more service to customers, or it could be an additional circuit altogether, parallel to something that it may express past a few neighborhoods and feed a new development. Rebalancing is often something we do as well. Circuitry and how we move things around. You may be today on the TED circuit, and then we kind of switch around and said, you know what, there's capacity over here, less likely to be an outage based on loading criteria, and we'll put you on the Frank. So we do that as well. Substation criteria, there is always, there is a list. It is a longer process typically to move through. Licensing takes time. There is a plan for it. As things grow, we reach our capacity. We have a threshold we like, and then we have a threshold we can run at, and then we have a beyond threshold. So what we do is we operate in the max to the min capacity to find the sweet spot. Obviously, we can't go out there and what we would call gold plate, put a bunch of extra stuff in for potentials or futures. We could have a developer saying, I'm going to put 10,000 homes out here, and we spend and we go against the rate case, and all of a sudden we have no development. So we have to kind of hedge our bets a little bit and balance things the best we can. Obviously, providing the reliable, safe, dependable service is really what we're trying to do. So it's a balance. In a perfect world, we would be able to put a bunch of stuff in and wait for it to catch up. But we're always right on the edge of balancing, where it's like just right where we're not asking for additional funds through the rates to install additional infrastructure. Hopefully that answered some of the questions. Yeah. I can kind of take a crack at it a little bit. I know it's all based in timing, so there's a... Sure. The question? The question is reaching Edison's, the constituents of the city, as well as California's green energy goal, and the mandates to get there. There's a little bit of a timing. So we have an industry, or I'll say when we built, natural gas, propane, and electric was a combination of many things. As we move towards it, it's incentivizing going all electric. Obviously, the rebates from the state, cities, as well as Edison, they're all out there. It's a timing thing. If we could, snap our fingers and we all go electric, we would be desperately struggling to keep up. The one thing that's the saving grace is how do we burden the cost of telling somebody that's a nice gas stove that's worked really well, but we think you should go electric, right? I don't cook a lot. I'm a single person, and I warm up my Trader Joe's chili. Do I need an electric range and stovetop? It's a balance. We're definitely looking at demands, and then it's a little bit of a juggling act, I'll say, for us as well as our engineering group, with the adoption of solar and the support of the solar system. We're trying to drive the needs of bringing it up fast enough, and then the customers are offsetting it, bringing it back down. So we're doing a little bit of a juggling act. Being mindful, we have total calculations on all circuits, so we know where everything is at all times. There could be a high point, which what I call the threshold where we like to run. We have emergency basis where we can run higher. We don't operate in that space consistently. It could be an emergency somewhere else may impact your neighborhood, and the thresholds are pushed up. Timing-wise, there's a lot of belief on what we need to do. Total megawatt, growth, it's tremendous. I don't know what the calculation would be, but the cars alone, that'll be a huge undertaking itself. We're doing so much more with, this is one thing that I faced since coming to this district, the customer disconnect, reconnect on solar. We run two-man crews full-time, meeting throughout the Coachella Valley on our supported area, meeting customers daily to do the solar. And so that's a changing, it's putting back onto the grid and to levelize. Obviously, we support off hours when it's not a sun type situation. Batteries are another, I'll say, a factor that we're juggling as well. Edison's in support of solar and battery systems, but one system could put a battery, one system may just be straight solar. So it's a little bit of I won't say a mystery, but it's, we're trying to do it just right. If we could, we'd install everything we need on our projected load for, 25 years from now to meet our goal, but until we know really where everything's going, the state obviously mandating certain deadlines and hard commitments from, electric industry itself and pushes us along, but at the end of the day, residents that are paying bills are impacted as well, so it's, do I need to change out this? Maybe. So it's a balance. So like I said, it's a little bit of a juggling act, and we're trying to meet the needs of the customers.
To that, I'd like to add briefly, we speak to companies that are going to put in fleet electrification. And we say, call us early and often. We give free engineering consulting. There are programs we will even, in some situations, pay not only to bring the line to the property, but we will dig the trench, put the conduit, bring it to a point in the parking lot where the chargers are going to go. And some of those programs will even include the charger. So we have a range of solutions for the larger operators, and that's really where the planning has to happen in advance as much as possible. The residential situation is challenging, as Matt described, but trying to charge, we're moving to electric trucks, thank goodness, because of the air pollution and so on, but that is where we really need to have early consultation opportunities with fleet operators. So, and in fact, we have a brilliant crew of people who are ready to do that and have been focusing on the areas over by the port where there's so many trucking companies that are electrifying there now. So it's an exciting time. Yes, sir. I live in Rancho Mirage. I didn't answer a survey. Did you answer one here? And who? Okay. Do you happen to have any background on that? We're going to have to look into that. Did it come to you like through email? Please answer this survey. Okay. We're going to have to find out. We're going to have to find out about that. I don't have an answer for you. I'm sorry to say. Right. Okay. Well, we have been talking with our friends here at the city about increasing our participation in some of their own communication streams, and so we're going to be doing that. And that will help. They also advertise this quite a lot on the social channels of the city. So some of that went out, but I can see that we have to do even more. And so we will. And that was you asked one question about the survey. What's your other? The other one has to do. Yeah. Right. Batteries were less common. I can address some of that. So, big picture, and I think you probably know this, the question had to do with compensation for solar. And even though there seems to be a lot of abundant production of solar in this customer's system, he's still paying more than he expects on an annualized basis for power. So one concept, I believe that you're extremely educated on all of this. Therefore, I imagine you know the utility buys power in a commodity marketplace and passes that through to customers without markup. The price of power varies throughout the day. So it's not merely higher demand between 4 and 9 p.m. Generally, on average, statewide, power costs more because that's still, despite COVID and shifts in when people are home and not home, people use more power between 4 and 9. Used to be because everybody came home from work and school around the same time that some of the solar was going down and some of the wind was changing, and wind is variable in different places in the state and so on. But as a rule, in the power marketplace, power costs the most from 4 till 9. At my house, I use no large appliances then. I never charge the car then. I'm very careful. Pool is off, all of that. So the point, though, is with the power being priced there, what you use is you're charged what the utility is paying for it. And there have been increases in the price of power in the marketplace. We can look at the natural gas price rise phenomenon from last winter at this time that drove up electricity prices a lot for a short period of time, but still a big spike because so much of the electricity comes from natural gas power plants. So that's just an example of a market phenomenon that would affect the bill, and it's being passed straight through with no markup. So some of what you're describing in terms of your own bill experience has to do with just the cost of power. Now, you're doing all the right things in keeping track. The 4 to 9 is really the best opportunity you have to exert whatever control you can to reduce usage. And that's, I can talk about that. I don't have an answer for you on the times from going from the community, the CCA to the utility and back and forth. I know that's also very regulated, and the processes are meant to create a fair opportunity for the CCAs and a fair opportunity to let people come and go. And so there are minimums and that kind of thing that have to do with how quickly all of that flows. It's nearly all going to be regulated. That's a general concept, but I don't have a specific answer for you, I'm sorry to say, on your particular experience. Yes, ma'am. Okay, great, thanks. One of the city staffers has some information and she will share that. Thank you. All right, I'm looking around for curious faces. I see.
So,
Yes.
we haven't heard as much as Northern.
So the question has to do with just generally describe what SCE is doing to manage vegetation, and I can answer that in the Coachella Valley and also in generally in the Southern California. So around here, we don't have to do as much vegetation management as we do on the other side of the Banning Pass, and more the farther you go toward the coast and north. So around Pasadena, Altadena, vegetation management is a constant topic. We're having to do a great deal of tree trimming. In the Coachella Valley, we don't have to do as much. The trees are not as tall, and that's a big factor. We have fewer bits of flying debris that can become airborne and go into power lines, which is one reason why on this side of the pass, we do not have public safety power shutoffs very often. In fact, I can't remember one, and I've been here 4 years. So that's a good thing. Those are instituted when winds are very high, reach a high threshold, and there's a chance of airborne debris, usually vegetation, can fly up in the air and strike a power line and cause a spark. We don't have that here as much. So the vegetation management we do is relatively manageable in the Coachella Valley. And is there, Matt, anything more on that we want to?
So there's an environmental consideration of what veg clearing looks like. We take a proactive approach for auditing line clearance associated distribution and transmission lines. Now, I can say this. Previously, other utilities would take a 50-foot wide berth all the way through, cut everything down to mitigate the risk. What we're looking is drop zone or line of fall for debris and trees. The other thing we've done is, I spoke about it a little bit before, which was covered conductor. We're moving towards a covered conductor, and that'll mitigate some of this. But our first approach is remove the ignition source, which is the tree. Typically out here, you're going to see palm fronds. But what we do is the veg management organization will trim up excess palm fronds. You'll see the unkept palm trees. That's the risk, right? Where one palm frond goes over and then it goes up. The idea is to clear it and keep it clear if it's within the zone of what we would deem a concern. That also comes with concern from the customers as well. Many times we have big, beautiful trees that we're like, I love my tree, it's close, but don't touch it. Unfortunately, for the greater good of making sure we don't have a large fire, large-scale incident, those are trimmed back. Those are all audited on a regular basis. They're making sure that we don't have ailing or declining health of trees. We'll proactively go out there and remove a tree. Looks good today. It has a known disease. Life cycle beyond this point is 3 to 5 years. It will be down. So we'll go out there and they look at, they know what to look at, what they're looking for, and we take a proactive approach. As Jeff indicated, there's not as much concern. We don't have 150-foot tall pines that we're worried about here, mostly palm fronds, and usually those are easily mitigated. And moving, the other thing I'll say is a lot of what we're doing is moving some of our stuff. You know, previously it was designed on a property line in the back of your lot. We all grew up with that, accustomed to it. Now you're seeing underground infrastructure, and then it's placed differently through the neighborhood. So that's part of it. So we're changing that to mitigate a lot of those concerns.
Get you on veg management? Okay, and yes. I can answer generally that there have been a lot of renovations to the site that have only have begun rolling out in the last couple of months. There's a lot there that didn't used to be, and it's really recent. So that is an ongoing process that involves certainly customer feedback, testing of everything, and that kind of thing. If we, Luis, you had changed the slides to put newer information. Do you want to add a point?
And thank you for the question, because we are actually doing things like that. Our IT groups are continuously working on what is the next iteration, how does the next interface version better interact with customer needs, right? So there is an active effort behind the scenes on that. Even just how we update outages into our internal system, just that interface alone has been changing quite a bit. So you will see over the next couple of years new deployments and new iterations of that interface with our customers. So we should see more and more improvement. I wish I could tell you that it's going to happen in about 2 months, but at the speed of IT process, it's not there. I'll be quite honest. But just like we've seen some new deployments on the SCE.com site, you'll continue to see those moving forward. Any additional questions, concerns, or you feel like yelling at Shane? Because he's... That's a great question. Here, I'll speak from my perspective. So for me, one of the things I'm really enjoying is to see how the grid is able to respond a lot faster to the changing conditions. So if there is a down power line or something is happening, the grid is able to respond a lot faster. There are some testing occurring behind the scenes on different technologies that are going to be deployed in the future, and it looks very exciting on how quickly we're going to be able to respond to different needs. So stay tuned, because when I'm back in about 5 years, I might have some better news, and you might be even really happy to see me then.
Sure. Similar would be the technological advancements of the system. So the reliability and the operational capability will go leaps and bounds forward. And from a simple perspective, so I sit and work in the service center. I see the customers come with frustration on their face. It's not always a bad story. There's times that there's a lot of frustration, but we are hearing stories of your outage notification process is working. My crews in particular are updating the ERTs, which is the expected return time. They're saying, I got an update, it said 2 hours versus originally it said 8. they're saying they see that. So that tells me the things we're doing and the changes we're making are providing a benefit to the customers in communication. I think a lot of it in the past was we would just expect a long period of time. Obviously, signing up for the communication and the notifications is important. Hearing some of the challenges, we've gone through a phase where it was much worse than it is now. And by any stretch of imagination, I don't think we're where we need to be with it, but we're getting previously I had challenges and it was 5 hours. Now I was on the phone for 30 minutes, which to me, it's still not where we want to meet our customers at, but it's getting better. So we know we're on a journey to get to where we need to go. We ask for understanding, and we're assuring our customers we're committed to make the experience better. So when I do see and have an interaction with a customer that's had a positive moment or a positive interaction with Edison or Edison employees, that's kind of what I'm excited about, because the customer part of it. We're here to provide a service, and quite honestly, the customer service aspect is something that I don't get to see as much. It's the, turning the lights back on, the happy faces, the lights come on in the house, the air conditioner turns on. Those are the experiences. But when we get the wins of, I wasn't on the phone forever, it moved faster than I thought it was, but, I want it to be quicker. We absolutely do as well. So that's something we're looking forward to.
For me, I would say it's utilizing technology to enhance the safety and reliability of the grid. As Matt was mentioning earlier, discussing covered conductor work, you're seeing a significant improvement, one, in safety, in terms of when we look at the wildfire aspect and the ignition element to that, but then you're seeing a real strengthening in reliability. There's a durability during storm events that customers are benefiting from. It's not something that we maybe acknowledge on a daily basis, but in those times of needs, quote unquote, you realize, hey, this technology is working. And I think that's only going to be improving in the next decade to come. So.
Thanks. I'll add that I work here because I want to be part of the clean energy transition. And I began my career working in healthcare and focusing on the health of individuals. And now I feel like I'm focusing on the health of the bigger environment and the country and the planet. And I'm working at a company that is a global leader in advancing the clean energy future. And, in our performance, we have to write, what are you going to do this year? And I'm like, oh my God, answer the phone a lot. But you have to have all that fit into a bigger picture. And I always start, well, I'm going to advance the clean energy future by engaging stakeholders, and I'm going to reach them through the various ways that I'm involved in communications to try to encourage people to understand that it's a place where we all can thrive. We're going to make an investment in the short term that will pay a great deal of reward in the future. The ongoing electrification of California is going to bring down the cost of energy consumed by the average customer. We have a paper that we put out in the fall, Countdown to 2045, and we're looking at 40% reduction in energy cost as people move away from fossil fuels toward ever more efficient electrification. And it relies on better technology, such as heat pumps and electric cars and things like that. Efficiency has improved so much in the last few years. I mean, when the gas water heaters die, they need to be replaced with heat pump water heaters, which use a fraction of the energy that a gas one does, just as an example. Not to mention the efficiencies that we see using heat pumps for heating and cooling of, the buildings. So between efficiency and the reduction of the fossil fuels, people are going to see a savings. However, just like getting healthy, we're kind of having to invest now and build all the systems that we're going to need to support this electrification. It's rather like I'm going to the gym now so I will be more mobile when I'm older. On a slope, of increasing. Well, that's going to vary by each customer. The question is, when will customers start seeing savings? That's going to vary customer to customer based on their particular energy use profile. Mine, I'm winning because I have enough solar to handle what's there, and I'm driving an electric car. I bought a used electric car. So in that situation, I'm a little ahead. But for the big, across the economy, we see significant rises by about 2035, and then a more complete level of savings by 2045. But you're probably ahead despite the challenges you've been having because you have all those panels. So it is going to make a difference already. And at mine, I don't know if you remember, I bought this house in 2020, and it had a 1999 air conditioner condenser in the yard that was the size of a chest freezer, remember those? And every time it kicked on, all the lights in the Coachella Valley dimmed a little bit. So I saved up and I replaced it with a more efficient condenser, and what a difference. I didn't even go heat pump because the house wasn't wired for it. A huge improvement in efficiency just because I got modern equipment. That kind of thing is going to make a difference as well as we move toward electrification. So that's what I'm excited about, is being a part of it. Everyone, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time and attention. Great to see you, and we'll come back.